Yes.
You're here seeking commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in April 1985 in Bossier Parish for a first-degree murder conviction. You received a life sentence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I take full responsibility.
Okay, we're going to let you say that in just a minute. Your case has been assigned to Mr. Tony Narabella, seated to my right. Would you answer his question?
Good afternoon, Mr. McGuffey. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. McGuffey, how old are you, sir?
64,
And how long have you been in prison on these charges?
38 years.
And you were roughly 25, 26 when this happened?
24.
24.
25, I mean, yes. 25, I'm sorry.
Tell me a little bit about your educational background. How far did you go in school?
Well, I went to the 7th grade and I had to drop out because my daddy died of cancer. And I had to help my mom and them.
Did you ever get your GED?
I took it down here and everything. I like 2 points past me.
So you haven't gotten your GED. I thought maybe you had. I thought I'd read that you had gotten your GED, but you haven't gotten your GED yet?
Not yet. I got it all but 2 points.
Tell me what kind of work are you doing while you're in prison?
I'm a mechanic at tractor repair.
Tell me in your own words, as best you can, what happened in 1984 with Miss Earlene Crabtree? How did you end up killing her? Tell me exactly what you did.
Well, what happened was we was down there at the bar and everything, which she owned the bar. But we went down there and was having a good time and everything. And further back in my life and everything, when I was 14, me and her used to see each other. Well, what really happened was we went out there to talk about it and everything, you know, because she was starting trouble with my family and everything. And she didn't want to talk. She wanted to go out there and have sex. And I wouldn't do it. And we got in an argument. She went to hit me in my face and stuff. And I don't know. I don't really know what happened then. I'm sorry. I couldn't think no more. I don't know. I just blacked out.
Well, how did she end up in a pond? What did you do with her body? You don't remember killing her?
No, sir, I don't. I've seen her laying there by the pond. And I'd have left. I don't know, I panicked.
Were you drinking that night?
Yes, sir, we was.
Were you doing any kind of drugs?
No, I wasn't doing no drugs.
Just drinking. What all had you had to drink?
Well, I drank about a half a fifth of whiskey and about 2 6-packs of beer.
Why is it that you can't remember anything? Is it because you were drinking? You were too drunk to remember?
I don't know. I'm gonna tell you the truth, I don't know. I know I went out there to try to straighten this here out. She went to want to fight and all that stuff here on and she hit me in my face. I don't know. I don't know what happened.
You don't remember telling your wife that you had killed her and put her in the pond?
No, I never told her that. That's something that they got her to drop the charges on her.
So why do you think? What do you think happened then? You've been in prison for a long time. You went to trial, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you listen to the facts that came out at trial?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you disagree with them? What came out at trial? What were the facts that came out at trial that happened?
Sure, the fact that the trial and everything, and I never seen the body or anything like this here after. When I come to my senses, I got my truck and left because I was scared. I ain't gonna lie to you, I didn't even go around the body after that. I'm sorry. That's all I can say.
Tell me a little bit about your criminal history before 1984.
Well,
Had you gotten in before?
1980.
He said, what, tell them about your priors.
Oh, about the trial?
No, your prior offenses, your
Oh.
prior convictions.
You were arrested for theft and burglary, simple escape, forcible rape, battery. Tell me about those. Is that all alcohol related? Were you drinking every time you got arrested in the past?
Well, I got arrested for simple burglary and everything, and they tried to put a forcible rape on me that time and everything, and the lawyer found out that the girl was lying and come up there and give a note or a letter that she wrote saying that I didn't have nothing to do with that.
Was drinking involved in the burglary charge?
No, not then.
Are you an
Hey.
alcoholic?
No, sir, I wasn't. We only drank fire. Me and my wife only drank off and on. Like on a weekend, we might go spend one day down there.
So you're telling me that you were drinking that night,
Yes, sir.
don't remember anything that happened, but you're not an alcoholic?
Well, I ain't saying I'm an alcoholic or not, because I don't drink every day.
Okay, well, when did you
Maybe
start?
one day a week.
Let's back up a little bit. You were 64 years old. When did you
Right.
start drinking? Came to prison when you were 25. When did you start drinking?
So, well, I'd have to say when about 81, 82, something like that there.
What did you start drinking? What did you drink?
Beer. I just
How
drank
often,
beer.
how often would you drink?
Like on the weekend still. I didn't get to do it all the time. Cause I worked.
Talk a little bit about what you've done while you've been in prison. You've got a very good disciplinary record. You've had 10 write-ups. Your last one was in 2006, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You've taken a number of programs. You've taken Living in Balance, 1 and 2, Cage Your Rage, 100 Hours Pre-Release. Tell me what you've learned in those programs. How have they helped you?
Well, it's just like Cage Your Rage. I'm one on. I've always walked around with a chip on my shoulder, you know. And I went to victims awareness, 100 hours victims awareness. They told me, you know, drugs, alcohol, whatever, you know, you use them when you get in trouble and everything is not the answer. It's just like this here. I'm here for something home that I can't even remember what I done. That's why I don't use alcohol or drugs no more. Never again will I ever drink that or use that. I had, you know, take pain pills for my back, but that's all.
Tell me a little bit about the training that you've had there. Understand you've done a lot of training in auto mechanics and auto repair type things. Tell me about that.
Well, I've been at a track repair for 13 years, but I also mechanic on the streets, you know, small shop, out in the country. But, I, been tractor repair for 13 years. When I was on the floor working, I was training guys and everything to help them, you know, catch up on what we all done. There ain't but two of us out there been there that long.
Mr. McGuffey, how have you changed from the person that came to prison in 1984, 85 until today? How can
Well-
I be sure you're not going to go back out there and do something like this again? Especially since you don't even remember what you did.
Because I'm not gonna drink and I'm not gonna do no drugs, is for one. Number two,
Well, no, let me stop you. You said you weren't an alcoholic. You didn't think that was a real problem, but are you an alcoholic or not?
no,
Have you done drugs before or not? You said no.
no, I don't do drugs.
Have you ever done drugs?
Drink. I've been around people that did smoke drugs, you know, but not me personally, no.
How are you different than the person that came to prison today?
Back when I would come here to the prison and stuff, I always thought, you know, people looked at me bad. And it wasn't them looking at me, it was me looking at them. And this is the whole thing behind a lot of the stuff that I got in trouble behind, because I felt growing up and everything, you know, that people was looking down on me because I was young and everything when I pulled a burglary off when I was young. And I always tried to do the right thing, and a lot of the people up there would tell you that. I always tried to help people. But growing up, I guess I just got to work home. I felt that, you know, I had to prove myself to them or something. And I'd walk around with a chip on my shoulder. I didn't want to hurt nobody. I never did want to hurt nobody.
So how are you different today?
Today, I help people every way I can. Just like at work, in the dorm, anywhere else. Used to, I wouldn't do that.
Mr. McGuffey, let me ask you, let me talk to you a little bit about your physical health. Are you taking medication right now?
Yes, sir.
What kind of medication do you take?
I take indomethacin, methylcarbinol, vitamin D3, insulin.
It's my understanding that you've been diagnosed with Parkinson's. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I was
Can
diagnosed.
can you tell me how that affects your ability to remember things or to explain to me maybe what happened? Is that something that might be causing you not to be able to remember?
Well, Parkinson's is something that deals with your nerves, and it comes from in the brain. And if you got Parkinson's, it just gets worse and worse and worse on, and like adrenaline gets up and anything, it gets bad. I can't hold nothing. It just something.
How long have you been diagnosed with Parkinson's? Do you know?
Since I was 5. I was 5 years old. My daddy had it. My daddy's sister had it. Just running our family.
What is your plan if you were to get some relief today and ultimately be eligible for parole and get out? What would be your transition plan?
Well,
Where would you live?
I, I would, go to the transition house, but I want to try to, build me up a little money and everything and get me a small engine shop or something like that.
You think you'd be able to work with your Parkinson's and the things that the medical issues that you have? Do you think you'll be able to work?
Yes, sir. I'm still at tractor repair, and like if a person has a problem out there and he can't solve it, I'll go out there and help him. I still work along with them.
That's not the question. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Warden Falcon, is there anything you can add?
Yes, ma'am. He has since 2008, 2007, 2008 worked at tractor repair. Prior to that, he was Morley as well. So his automotive technology history goes back to 2001 here. That tractor repair area is kind of out away from the compound, and it's one of those areas that we utilize our most trusted offenders to be able to do the work and have the supervision that we provide for them in those areas. So,
Thank you. Mr. O'Shea?
Madam Chairman, thank you. Mr. McGruffin. Good afternoon.
What do you think?
He just said good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon. I'm
Good.
sorry.
I want you to respond to something that was in a police report, okay?
Okay.
On November 12th, 1984,
Yes, sir.
the detectives attended the autopsy report in the autopsy of Miss Arlene Crabtree at the Bossier Parish Coroner's Office.
Yes, sir.
The cause of death was contributed to shock, as there was evidence of significant internal and external bleeding. The coroner also noted the victim had been raped using a blunt object. The cuts on the victim's hand appeared to be defensive wounds, according to the coroner, as if she was raising her hand near her face to block the weapon that slashed her across the face.
I don't know how that there could have happened, sir, because I didn't tote the knife with me.
Sir, this is physical evidence from the autopsy. It's not in question. She was raped with a square object repeatedly before her death.
I don't know. Sir, I
Okay,
ain't gonna lie to you.
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. We'll hear from the Parole Project. Mr. Myers.
Yes, good afternoon. Mr. McGuffey has been in prison for 38 years, and he's been a Class A trustee for a very long time. His last disciplinary write-up was 18 years ago, and he's only had 10 during that entire time. He's also taking substance abuse and anger management, living in balance, victim awareness, inside out dads, life of addiction and recovery. He's done tier walker training during his time there. Based on his health and his good record, we're committed to helping Mr. McGuffey long term, supporting him long term. Should this board give him a recommendation, we'll make sure that he has the proper medical attention. We'll make sure that he is connected to any benefits that might be available to him, including SSI or disability. We'll also look for long-term housing for him and make sure he's connected to any services, in-care services that would be corresponding with that. Saying that, after 38 years and 64 years old, Mr. McGuffey is a low risk of reoffending, and simply is really at a point of diminishing return of what can happen, what further incarceration can do for him. So we would just ask this board to consider his granting him a recommendation today.
Great, thank you. We'll hear from the opposition, Mr. Charlie Crabtree.
Charlie Crabtree, he's speaking in opposition.
There you
Yes,
go. Yes, sir, go ahead. We'd like to hear from you.
well, I totally oppose of him getting out on clemency. From what I read that he done to our mother, I don't think he needs to be out in society. He'd be a danger. That's pretty much all I've got to say about it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Crabtree. We appreciate your participation in the process.
You're welcome.
Mr. McGuffey, is there anything you'd like to say to us before we turn it over to Ms. Cole?
What did you say?
Your final statement.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate the board coming today and everything. And I appreciate, y'all taking the time to hear my side of the story and theirs too. But, I just want to say, I'm sorry for what happened. I really am. And I'm hurt deep because of the animosity that they hold against me and everything. But I can't blame them. I wanted to say that there and everything, and want to say thank you to the Pro Project and everything. I appreciate what all y'all done. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ms. Cole.
Thank you. Transformation and rehabilitation comes in different forms, and it's very important to recognize that rehabilitation is unique to each person. Mr. McGuffey is not a man of many words, but he has spent a lot of time as what he calls to be a loner, and that's been his time of self-reflection. But early into his sentence, he recognized the problems that he had, as far as his anger, and like he spoke about his having a chip on his shoulder. And for the last 38 years, he's been trying to work on that. His focus has been on the lessons that he's learned in those programs, the wisdom that he's gained from victim awareness and anger management have reshaped his perspective on things, and had the things that contributed to his offense and brought into the perspective the amount of hurt that he's caused. I know that we've talked in depth about his remorse, and he may not have been able to articulate that today, but he's very remorseful. He wrote a very heartfelt letter of a victim accountability letter that I inserted into his packet. And that daily remorse that he has is something that he carries with him, and it's something that he tries to become a better person. His extensive Class A trustee status and his placement at Camp F for the last 14 years demonstrates that he can conform to the laws of DOC, and he can also contribute to his society. And at 64 years old, and with Parkinson's disease and increased health problems and his back injuries, Mr. McGuffey will not be a threat to his community. He has a low Tiger score, which also indicates that he'll be low risk of reoffending. And he has the support of LPP to make sure that he has all the programs that he needs in order to be successful. Mr. McGuffey is more mature than he was at his 25 years of age before he came to prison. He spent 38 years growing and learning and maturing into the man that comes before you today. So we just ask that you consider the things that he's done and grant his request for clemency. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you. We're prepared for that. Mr. Marabella will be first.
Mr. McGuffey,
They're gonna
I've got some real concerns about, your inability to remember what happened. I don't know if it has to do with your Parkinson's. I'm sure it probably does have something to do with that. It bothers me a little bit that, well, it bothers me a lot about your drinking. I mean, you keep referring to, well, you know, my plan to get out is to stay away from alcohol and stay away from drugs, yet drugs wasn't an issue for you. And you have learned those things, and that's a really good thing. I don't know that you have a specific plan to stay sober. I know you've got a good plan ultimately if you're paroled at some point to go with the parole project, and I know that they will probably have some things to help you with that. This crime was horrible. I mean, it was just a horrible crime. I don't know if you're not remembering it because it was so horrible. I don't know the answer to that. That is, you know, all I can go on is what you're telling me here today.
Yeah,
As I look at your prison record, you've done a really good job while you've been in prison. Your disciplinary record is exemplary. You've been in jail for 38 years and you've only had 10 write-ups. You've taken some good programs, Living in Balance, Cage Your Rage, 100 Hours Free Release, Victim Awareness, Chill Walker Training, Inside Out Dads. You've done a lot of things. You've got mechanic skills. I really don't know if you're going to be able to utilize those with your condition. This is a hard case for me. I waffled the entire time I read it. I waffled throughout this interview with you. Well, I see a man who appears remorseful. I think you've done many things. I vote today because you've got good support and because you've got the Louisiana Parole Project behind you. My vote today would be to grant a commutation to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility. However, before you get to that parole phase, if you get enough votes, and I'm only one vote, I would hope that you would take some more substance abuse programs so you can get an understanding of how to make sure you don't go back to drinking. You present a very good case, Mr. McGuffey. That's my vote.
Mr. Freeman?
I also, like Mr. Marabella, have waffled back and forth. But the bottom line is, you know, sometimes you commit a crime and this crime is just, I don't know. It's one of the worst I've read since I've been on this board. And sometimes, you know, you got to pay the price for what you did. And with your prior criminal history and with the serious nature of this offense, my vote is to deny.
Mrs. Jackson?
All right, Ms. McGuffey, I recognize that not everybody has the same capacity to express themselves. You obviously have an educational deficit. You tried to get your GED, but haven't been able to do that. I think you said that. You've been in prison for 38 years. You've got a good disciplinary record while in prison. You have some health issues. And so for those reasons, my vote recommends commuting your sentence to 99 years with immediate parole eligibility.
Mrs. Jackson, Mr. Roche?
Mr. McGuffey, I'm gonna be as honest with you as humanly possible. You do remember what happened. You told your wife that you had murdered Miss Crabtree and laid her beside a pond. There's no way that she knew this because this information was not released to the media. No one else knew this except law enforcement. But when she came in, she told law enforcement and the DA's office exactly where she was, and she said, you confessed to her. So you remember what happened. So you're not taking responsibility for your actions. The nature of the crime, the victim's opposition, of her family's opposition to this request, your prior criminal history, and you have a forced supervision history. You are a third felony offender. For all the reasons I've just articulated, my vote is to deny your request.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. So, Mr. McDuffie, you have a split vote. You've got 2 votes that were favorable, 2 votes to deny. So the outcome today is to deny your application for clemency. Good luck to you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Cole.
Thank you. You got denied today. You guys.
We're going to start the unpacking by going through the details of the victim's injuries. And it is disturbing, to say the least. And like Mr. Roche touched on it, Mr. Freeman touched on it, and they voted probably based on reading that. And frankly, after reading this, it's beyond me how anyone could grant, because it's disturbing. It's serial killer stuff. It's out of the horror movies, the worst true crime. And it was just interesting how he conveniently had complete memory loss when it came to questions about this crime. But when they brought up questions about the prior crime, the accused sexual assaults and the invasions, and then his memory was perfect. Oh, it never happened. They brought a letter that it never happened. And it's someone like this that, in my opinion, gives me the serial killer vibes. I mean, but no, according to the Parole Project, it's his silence is just, he's an introvert. What's the big deal that he's doesn't have any friends? And even in his final closing statements, he seemed to make it about himself. I'm sorry that it happened. I feel, what was the words he used? I don't know, something like on the lines of that he felt attacked, that the victim's family were angry at him. Unbelievable. The Parole Project never ceases to amaze me with the monsters that they cover, and the idea that he even got 2 votes. So let's go over what the doctor said. Okay. Dr. George McCormick II, coroner at Cato Parish, performed an autopsy on November 12th. In addition to a large incision across her face from the hairline, across the jaw, down to the collarbone, he noted extensive severe bruising of the chest, abdomen, and right side of the pelvis. So this is in addition to an incision across her face from the hairline across her jawbone. On the right side of the victim's labia, the pubic hair had been shaved and the skin had been scraped away. In this area, there was extensive swelling and bruising. Dr. McCormick testified that these injuries were inflicted while the victim was still alive. Dr. McCormick also noted various wounds which he described as defensive in nature, as well as abrasions and scrapings on the lower back, which he testified were consistent with the body having been dragged. In addition to these injuries, the victim had broken nose, facial fractures, and facial bruises. Her chin was swollen and bruised, as were her lips. She also had a fractured tooth. Dr. McCormick testified that the facial injuries could have resulted from a fist, but would have required significant strength to inflict. He also found a hemorrhage at the back of the head and at the rear of the heart, as well as numerous rib fractures. There was also significant hemorrhaging in the abdomen, around the bladder, and vagina. Dr. McCormick observed lacerations inside the vagina, which were made with an instrument with either jagged edges or one that was inserted with great force. This is what Mr. O'Shea was alluding to. He stated these injuries could not have been received during intercourse. Dr. McCormick found no sperm present in the victim. Dr. McCormick determined that the internal injuries included massive abdominal hemorrhaging, brain contusion, and a crushed chest acted in concert to cause death. Dr. McCormick further testified that the crushing of the chest and the fracturing of the ribs most likely occurred while the subject was lying on the ground and in all probability being forcefully stomped with a foot. There you have it. Can't make it up. Someone being that brutally tortured with that kind of rage. And it's like, well, he took some programs. So, yeah, I get that he's got Parkinson's and that, but that doesn't mean he can't snap. And if you don't want to take the argument that he's not a danger to society, I think like Mr. Pete Freeman said, there are certain crimes that you just got to do the time for. And frankly, this is one of them. To think that the ones we heard about today are only the ones that he's been held accountable for. This, thank you, Richard, for providing this. There's quite, this is one of the longer appeals. It goes into all the details from before the crime happened up until when he's arrested and imprisoned. But it's really just, it's a lot of information. And I actually did the first recording where I read through the whole thing. And then I just realized that it was quite too long. So I did an abbreviated version, which you're seeing now. So I think that's how I'll keep it. The bottom line is that what we have here is, it just seems like what we have here is a monster. And he was denied. He wasn't, he's I don't know when he'll get a next chance at a commutation. But I think this is one of those cases where you see just the anger, the rage, and the idea that he might have used his knife, which they had in evidence to do that to her. These are not people that you should take a chance on. And it's also, what's interesting is that, I don't know if it's his slow Southern drawl or, his interview style, but that made it feel like maybe he's just not the sharpest tool in the shed. And this might not be evidentiary enough, but Richard found something where he sued. Now, it was a civil lawsuit. He was a participant. It was one of 4 inmates. So it's possible all he did is show up and sign his name. And there was some jailhouse lawyer that did the whole thing. That's possible, maybe likely. But they actually sued Louisiana saying it was unconstitutional that the women prisoners are housed in nicer facilities than the men, which I have no doubt is true. And that's quite interesting to, we're not going to go over it now. I'll put the link in the description if you want to see it. But, of course, and this lawsuit took place in 2000. How did they know about it? Well, they were staying in I'm not quite sure, but we do sometimes see men in the woman facility come up for parole, and maybe they were in a similar situation. I'm not quite sure, but here, I'll just show the tab. This is interesting, right? A court to determine if Louisiana must treat male and female prisoners equally. And see, they mention, what was the answer? In this case, there had been insufficient factual development to dismiss the equal protection claim. The dismissal is due process claim based on the facts. The upheld prior prisoners had no liberty interest in location of the confinement. The case was returned to district court for further proceedings and equal protection claims. As a digital subscriber of Prison Legal News, you can. So, I mean, yeah. In a nutshell, they of course weren't going to win that lawsuit. But it seems to come down to where it's just, regardless, you don't have a choice of where you are, and I don't know. But anyways, here you have it. It is interesting to think that there were 2 that approved and 2 that denied for a crime like this. And with that, I'll let you go.